So welcome everybody, this is amazing. Hodu Lashem Ki Tov, Ki Le'olam Chasdo. And I want to first thank the Shir Chadash community, the Ohel Nechama community, and the shuls themselves, Rabbi Per, for hosting this event. And a special thanks to Koren Publishers, and of course Menorah Books, which is a subdivision of Koren. Yibanet decided to sponsor this event. We begged them, oh my gosh, you're coming out with this book. We would love to promote this in any way we can. My wife and I, we started Yibanet, and our goal is very much the same as not just the Gottesmans, but also with Crossroads. We've been friends with the Gottesmans for a long time, many, many, many years. And we want to show our appreciation to the work that the Gottesmans have done with all the years with Meled, with school, and also a very deep appreciation for what Crossroads has done. Their special work, both of them, in prevention and intervention with teens at risk, and both Meled and Crossroads are an invaluable part of the landscape of Yerushalayim. It's just an invaluable part. You know, Tzar Gidul Banim, we all have our own issues making Aliyah, but especially for the Anglo community, and all the different trials and tribulations that we all go through with our own families, and trying to make Aliyah in not just a physical way, but in a spiritual way. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Yehudit, who will be the moderator for the evening. And I'm just so grateful for the panelists. They're here. What can we do without you? Please give a round of applause.
Thank you, Rabbi Poston. My name is Yehudit Singer. I'm the marketing manager at Menorah Books, which is a division of Koren Publishers. And I want to thank you all very much for coming out tonight for this important discussion. Everyone here who is here for this event is aware how difficult adolescence can be. All of us have been there in our own ways, and it could be confusing. It's a time of transition, a time of searching. Mix into that issues such as family conflicts, abuse, learning disabilities, cognitive or social issues, trauma. Those years can be fun, but they could also be very painful. They could be full of resentment, despair, distress, anger. So when our teens drop out of school, or when they're asked to leave, when they prefer to spend their time on the streets or anywhere but school, it leads to even more confusion and distress, mainly on the part of the educators and the parents. This evening, we are honored to host Dr. Menachem Gottesman and Robbie Sassoon, both of whom are experts in helping teenagers regain control of their lives and transform them into positive futures. Dr. Menachem Gottesman is the founder of Meled, the Merkaz Lemidat Dati, an alternative religious high school here in Jerusalem. He and his wife Leah are co-authors of Not at Risk, which we are honoring tonight. We're honored to have Leah with us tonight as well, who has played a very significant role in the development of Meled. Dr. Gottesman created this alternative religious school after his own son was kicked out of school. He drew on his own background in clinical work and academia, and established a school for teens who, for various reasons, fell through the cracks of the traditional school system. Teens that he insists are actually not at risk when they're provided with an environment of unconditional acceptance and confidence in their own abilities to succeed. Through its unique approach, Meled has succeeded in transforming the lives of high school students and their families for over 20 years. In fact, a number of Meled parents and alumni are here with us tonight. Robbie Sassoon is the Executive Director of Crossroads, a crisis intervention and outreach organization for English-speaking, pre-risk, and at-risk teenagers. It has a drop-in center with open doors and a dedicated welcoming staff of intervention workers, social workers, therapists, tutors, and volunteers who offers teens a place to go, free counseling, advocacy, education options, and a job center, as well as proactively being involved in street outreach. Melod and Crossroads have a lot of similarities, but there are also some differences. They represent different approaches to a common problem and have helped hundreds, if not thousands, of teens heal, transform their lives, and flourish into adulthood. So thank you both for being here tonight and sharing your insights with us. We will hear from our experts and then open the floor to questions from the audience afterwards. So the first question I have is for you, Menachem. Rabbi Dean Steinsaltz, in his approbation to your book, Not at Risk, wrote that the success of Melod was, quote, not the outcome of administrative success, but rather a unique combination of understanding and love. This is a very impressive statement, but it's not what's usually associated with traditional educational settings. So, Menachem, what inspired you to create Melod and its approach of alternative education?
I think I ought to give a small introduction to the question. The last thing I expected to do, when getting off the plane when we made Aliyah in August 2nd, 1977, would be to become a principal and a founder of a high school. Impossible. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I must say, in his plans and our plans, sometimes things do work out. I established the school, basically, when my youngest son, who was serving in the Army, at a family dinner, had suggested, Abba, why don't you create a school that would be able to deal with kids that had dropped out? And he was a dropout. I took his suggestion seriously, because basically he's a serious guy. I studied the subject and took to the streets to investigate the issues involved personally. I then started on my own a 2-year pilot project. From 1995 to 1997, I created my own program without any intervention, without Misrad Chinuch. I did it on my own, and this is what I really would consider siyata d'shmaya. I had envisaged a program that would attract this population back in order to enable them to return to their previous frameworks. My first concept, when I started to work with these kids from the street, I would try to build them up and return them back to the schools and the institutions which they were learning in order to enable them to return to their previous frameworks. What was clear and gave me so much impetus to fight the system was the message that I received from these kids, that they did want to learn, and they did want to be part of some kind of framework or a school. Thus, in 1997, I was approached and requested, with the assistance of Professor Danny Sperber and Hanan Parat, Zichron Livracha, I was approached by the Minister of Education, the late Zevulun Hammer, who had requested that I take whatever I'm doing in those 2 years. Apparently, people began to feel and understand that I was in the right direction. In 1997, upon starting an actual school and facing, even though the Minister of Education had accepted the idea that I work within the system, still there was bureaucracy within Misrad Chinuch, primarily within the Agafa Dati of the religious sector of the ministry, that there was a denial of the problem. No way that there were Dati kids floating around in the city of Jerusalem, but they were totally wrong. So thus, the school, in a sense, began. My son gave me the idea. I took it seriously. I did the research. I went out to talk to kids. And I must add something else. Not only did I find that the kids do want to learn, because learning is synonymous with life, but I also felt that I was able to reach them and speak to them, maybe speak to their hearts. So thus, in 1997, we began a school program that was able to offer these students an opportunity to study in a Masgaret. We still were not officially recognized, and we still were attached to the Hartman School, and we still were attached to the girls' program. It turned out it wasn't only a program for boys, and it was also a program for girls, and then maybe later on, it's also for religious as well as non-religious students, but it all came together in 1997, and for 3 years, we worked very hard with these two institutions until Misrad HaChinuch finally came to the decision that yes, we are entitled to receive recognition as a high school, a bona fide, qualified high school, as any other high school in the state of Israel.
So Meled was established in '97, which was 21 years ago, and Crossroads was established in 2001, which was 17 years ago. So Israel has changed a lot in these past 2 decades, and as we all know, the entire world has changed considerably, especially given technology, etc. So Robbie, maybe you could share with us a little bit from your experience. How has the profile of at-risk teens changed in this time?
Hi, everyone. Firstly, I just want to thank Koren for the opportunity to come and speak, and just share the honor is to sit next to Dr. Gottesman. I read the book. I was very enriched, and it's already had a wonderful impact on my thought process, so thank you. Crossroads engages with over 1,000 teens in distress each year. And we have a number of services. We have our outreach on the street, we have a drop-in center, we have a GED program, we have vocational programs, we have we have a clothes closet, we have all sorts of basic services. And sometimes, obviously, we see hundreds of kids in therapy, and some kids, they come and we see them in one of our particular services. And from time to time, we see that there are kids that use all our services. So going back about 8.5 years when I started at Crossroads, we usually called that kid a Crossroads kid, or a center kid. And Crossroads kids and center kids who were teens in distress, I'm going to try not to use the term at risk, not only in honor of the title of Dr. Gottesman's book, but because I think it's very confusing. But those kids, we would say, those are Crossroads kids. And what would they look like? They usually have a hoodie. Often they'd have piercings, tattoos, long hair, ripped clothing, and characteristically, they would be angry. They would be often get into a lot of fights and have issues with violence, often issues with addiction, a lot of good, anti-social, behaviors, runaway, promiscuity, and to a certain extent, they were easily identified. And when we would go out on the street, we would, that's a Crossroads kid. That teen is in distress. That teen needs our help. And I have to say that 8 years later, one of the most fascinating, I guess, on the level of research or academic or process, processes that I've gone through is to see the changes of the kids that we're engaging, whether it be on the street, in our drop-in center, or in therapy. They don't look like that anymore. They look pretty normative. You know, fewer, I mean, we also get kids who are runaways and, you know, coming in with the green hair and, you know, we still see it, but not to the same extent. We're seeing kids that look more normative. We're not seeing kids who are yelling at you in the face, telling you, I'm very angry, and I want you to pay attention to me. We're seeing a different type of teen in distress. We're seeing teens who are struggling more inward, whether it be depression, anxiety, different forms of self-harm, thoughts of suicidality, you know, or attempting. So it's really a different type of teen that we're seeing. The first teen that I mentioned, that, you know, the teens that I would see when I started, we would call those teens who were acting out. And today we're seeing teens something that we're referring to as kids who are acting in. Obviously, there's still teens who are acting out, and there's always a spectrum of teens. But we've seen a real change in our population to a certain extent that's guided us as to, you know, how we do our work, how we do our outreach. You know, just a very quick story. We see Israeli teens, high school kids, from the ages of 13 to 22. We also see gap year students. One of the yeshivot that we see young adults from is Neve. Neve traditionally got a lot of these teens who were acting out. And someone from Neve was applying for a particular specific type of job that I had at Crossroads, and they said to me, you know, I don't know if they said they were struggling or they were seeing fewer kids, and I said, hold on, let me guess. You're seeing fewer kids who are dropouts with the long hair, who are, you know, in everyone's faces. And she says, how did you know? I said, because I went through the same process. I said, and if I have to guess, you're seeing kids who are, look more normative, and they're struggling more internally. And I think and she said that I was absolutely correct. And I think that the important thing to note is that the suffering is still out there. It's just expressing itself in different ways. You know, and that's something that, you know, we speak a lot about, you know, amongst our staff. And, you know, when we talk about, you know, teens look different, even though it's not as much acting out, it doesn't mean that suffering is any less. Actually, the suffering could actually be more intensive than it used to be. And it's harder to pick up on.
So connected to what you're saying, Robbie, about acting in versus acting out, or beforehand acting out, and now, as you say, acting in, I'd like to ask both of you, basically both of your organizations, both Crossroads and Meled, provide a warm, healing environment that have both helped so many students, so many teens move forward in their lives. And I'm wondering, can you elaborate on what each organization does in order to help the teens heal? You're describing a lot of inner pain that teens are going through, depression, anxiety. How would you describe, Menachem, how would you describe what Meled does in terms of the environment that they provide that helps them transform their lives? And then Robbie, if you could elaborate a bit on what Crossroads does.
Well, I think basically the whole conceptual framework of Meled evolves around two cardinal principles. To create a non-pressuring environment, number one, and to create a program that is student-oriented, student-centered, rather than curriculum school-centered. These are the two major principles that I came to understand as I began to work with the students during the two-year pilot program. Now, to the best of my understanding, there's a level of angst, of hurt, that our specific population has experienced. And what we try to do at Mellon is create a healing environment, which analogically or metaphorically, I would try to describe Mellon as an intensive cardiac care unit. All of the students that come to Mellon, some place in their heart, something hurts. And it's our responsibility to help with the student find the place that hurts the most, try to touch it in some way, and then create what we call a self-healing process. Once you touch the place that hurts, the heart will feel better, the blood will begin to pump, and it will reach the mind. So the major emphasis, although it's a school, and there's a curriculum, and there's a program, and we have prescribed, boundaries of what we're able to do, but within the framework of the hours that our students attend the school, our major objective is to help them to begin to help themselves, to create an environment in which they will feel very comfortable. The cardiac care unit is, as I see, contains, once a student enters the school, we put the student on a intravenous drip. The intravenous drip contains acceptance, trust, choice, and unconditional love. And that intravenous that we give the student will remain with the student all the way through, from the time he entered to the time he leaves. But we're not specialists. We can't do heart transplants. We can't do bypasses. Sometimes we try. Sometimes we may be successful. But we also know how to refer students to other institutions when all that we are able to offer is not very successful. So basically, the school is a self-healing environment. It's an environment in which the kids will feel comfortable, not pressured, and they will feel that they are the center. Each student in the school is the center, and the entire staff surrounds that center. And each one offers what they are able to offer in order to make the student feel better.
If you could elaborate on how Crossroads helps these teens deal with the inner pain, the anxiety, the depression that you were talking about, the acting in. What methods does Crossroads use?
Right, so I'll start off by saying that there's no magic pill. There's no magic formula. I took my staff yesterday to sit with another great a leader in the field, Rabbi Dr. Abraham Twersky. And we started asking him about his theories and to give us skills. And he said, I really don't do theory and skills well. He said, the most important thing is that the person that's sitting across from you understands that you care about them. He said, not only that they understand it, but they feel it. And it was a humbling experience. Because here we are, I told my staff, say we're going to meet, a psychiatrist, and we're going to, seek his, guidance on the latest, approaches to engaging. And he really brought it back to basics. And I so appreciated it because if there was a magic pill, if there was if there was something where it all starts, and this is what Dr. Gottesman was referring to, the heart, in terms of making sure they understood that we care. I'll note that nothing happens quickly, especially where the pain goes deep. And I'll note, it's a process. It's a process that starts on the street. We're right there with them. It starts on the crisis call. We're right there with them. It could be in the middle of the night. It continues in a very informal environment. We're playing ping pong in our moadon. We're playing Super Mario Brothers in our moadon. We're hanging out in the office. And it continues into a more formal environment in the therapy room. And it's a process. And it's a process of the teen or young adult who we're working with, understanding that we believe in them, understanding that we're with them no matter what, understanding them with all of their flaws and with all of the flaws they think they have. We're going to sit by them, and we're going to let them make more mistakes. When we ask clients, alumni, to talk about, Crossroads and how its impact on their life, they don't say one word. They talk about the process. Well, I met Crossroads when I was 15 years old on the street. And then I was with them in their moadon, and then I went through a really tough time, and I called them in the middle of the night. And then I really needed to work on some tough things through therapy. It's a process.
So, a number of books have been written over the past decade or so, offering advice to families with teens who are quote-unquote off the derech. So, Menachem and Robbie, based on your respective experience, to what degree is religion, or perhaps more specifically, their parents' religion, a central factor in the distress of the teens that you help? Or do their troubles stem from other causes, maybe from social pressure or whatever social environment they're in?
Okay, first of all, the name of the school is Merkaz Lemidat Dati. And we made a decision after we added the girls to the program, so it's a co-educational program. We also made a decision to accept any student from a religious background or non-religious background. There's no coercion within the school, except that the school is under the supervision of Agafa Dati, and most of the staff are Dati themselves. So there's no religious coercion whatsoever. But when students feel devalued, whether it's from their homes, teachers, peers, when they repeatedly receive negative feedback from the environment, how important to them are the practice and rituals of tradition. When a mefakachat initially came to the school, had no concept of where these kids were emotionally. All she was concerned is how long are the sleeves of the girls? Do the boys, wear tzitzis? How many times during the week did they daven, etc., etc. They just didn't know how to communicate with kids. The mefakachat just didn't understand the feelings of where these kids are. Students have taught me, only when kids can believe in themselves can they believe. And when we believe in them, they can move on in their lives. So it's our ability to restore their belief in themselves. And once they believe in themselves, they certainly have an opportunity to believe in others, and then also choose as how they wish to practice or what their beliefs may be. So basically, you could have a religious school that doesn't coerce the students, but gives them an opportunity to find their own way. And our experience has been that a lot of these kids return closer to their roots, closer to their heritage, closer to their families, closer to their parents, but they do it on their own, in their own style. And we, certainly at the school, are totally non-judgmental.
So how does that work, like practically speaking? Can you give us an example of, in the school environment or in general, like meaning you want to, you know, create a respect for religion, a respect for maybe halakha, and yet you're giving them, you know, the freedom and the independence to act however way they want. So can you walk us through that? How does it work in actuality?
Once a student is able to understand what we're offering them, and once the educator is able to connect to the student, there's a process of a relationship, a bond, a synergy between the student and the school faculty member. Once they feel comfortable with the environment in which they're in, once they know that we're not pressuring them, once they know that we accept them, and once they know that we trust them, they will automatically understand that they're in a religious framework. And they will use us as examples to develop some kind of a spiritual connection between us, as Rav Soloveitchik, we'll talk about it a little bit. Students are looking for not teachers, they're looking for people. They're looking for contact. They're looking to feel who we are. They want to know who we are. They want to feel that we feel them. There's this reciprocal relationship that develops between the student and the school, the student and the teacher, the student, everybody in the staff. They are looking to identify and use us as some reflection of who they are. Now, once they feel comfortable, totally comfortable in this environment, they are also able to open themselves up to all kinds of different opportunities. Some kids will decide to go to school and start learning and start doing the bagrut. Great. Some kids will decide maybe to go out and work a little bit. Some kids will decide that the ball is in their court. Once a student feels that the ball is in their court, the whole world opens up to them. They feel empowered. And part of that empowerment is also our desire on our part to help them make those decisions that are most meaningful for them. And if it has to do with the area of religiosity or beliefs or emunah, we are there available to listen to them, to try to understand where they're coming from and where they would like to go. And we're there, and we gently guide them. So there's no stira, there's no contradiction between a totally non-coercive environment which enables kids to make their own decisions based on their own needs at a time, as Robbie said, when they are ready. So Baruch Hashem, those that have decided to go, whatever direction the student takes, that's the best direction. There's no bad directions. There's no judgmental factors in deciding, well, this kid, yes, this kid, no. Every kid is yes. Every kid is great. Every kid feels, and we feel with them. So I don't, we don't make a big deal about, religion per se as a, because these kids have broken away from family tradition, religion, etc. But they didn't. They broke away basically from themselves. And now, when we reunite them, it's easy for them to go back to maybe where they started, or maybe look for some new directions. Robbie?
So to answer your initial question was, does religion play a central role in the decisions that the teens that we're seeing have made? Yes, it plays a major role. Does the religion of the parents play a major role? Yes. But that's not why they rebelled. That's not why they're in distress. People love asking us, because we work with Anglo kids. So they said, is Aliyah the reason? Is it because of Aliyah? No, Aliyah is not the reason. No, Aliyah is a trigger, right? Aliyah comes with challenges. Religion comes with challenges. Religion isn't the reason why the teens turned out, went off the derech. Religion isn't the reason why teens are in distress. I don't think the reason has ever changed. You know, the reason is teens are searching. The reason, when it comes to the parents, it comes often to unhealthy relationships, abusive or neglectful relationships, or traumatic experiences. I think I agree 100% with what Dr. Gottesman said in terms of seeing what happens when you give some space to a teen who is off the derech, left religion to feel better. You know, there's a beautiful midrash about Moshe Rabbeinu when he was a shepherd, and one of the sheep ran away, and he ran after it, and he saw that the sheep went to a stream of water, and he began to drink, and he said to the sheep, he says, "Now I understood why you ran away from the flock. You were thirsty." In response, God says to him, "Now I see the way that you are the shepherd of, sheep. You could be the shepherd of my people." Because Moshe Rabbeinu realized that there was something hurting there beyond being part of the flock. Right? It goes beyond religion. And we see it so often. And by the way, Crossroads is not a religious, Melad's a potentially religious institution that doesn't force religion. We're not even a religious institution, but we see so many religious kids. And what happens? So often, when they work out whatever they need to work out in their process, they find their place. Often what their parents did, often something else, but they find their place. Religion isn't the problem. And I have a great story about that, but I'm gonna hand this over and save the story for later.
I just want to make one additional comment. Usually the concept off the derech means that a kid is going off the derech, but it has some kind of religious connotation. Our understanding is that the only way we could deal with kids, if there is such a concept off the derech, just widen the derech. Mm-hmm. The road has to be wide enough for each kid to be on some kind of path. Let's not narrow it. Maybe religion, for some of these kids, narrow the path, and this is why they find difficulties dealing with the path. Give them, as Robbie said, give them enough space, and they'll find their way.
That's really beautiful, beautiful. This connects with a question that I've been asking since the manuscript of the book first came across my desk, and that is, Menachem, why did you title your book Not at Risk?
One, it's very difficult for me to label kids at risk, okay? And two, are we not all at risk? The whole question of risk is a label, and I have most of my life avoided labeling kids at risk. And it's funny, even my presentation to the book to the publisher, he said, Menachem, please try to describe the kids in your school. And I keep on talking, and I never gave him an answer. So he said, also it appears, these kids are not at risk. You can't call them at risk if they're really not at risk. So there's a philosophy behind calling the book Not at Risk, because it's the way we look and the way we perceive these kids. It's the kid we're looking at. We're not looking at the problem. The problem is the problem, but the kid is always the kid. So it really is, it's a good question. There's deep philosophical meaning in why we don't label kids and how we review kids and how we approach kids. And if we start from the point of view of the problem, we'll always get caught up in the kid's problem. But when we focus on the kid, we'll get caught with the kid, and that's what the kid wants us to get caught up with him, not his problem. And as I always said, most of the time when I interview kids for the first time, 90% of the kids, we talk about the future, we talk about the school, we talk about my philosophy, etc. And most of the kids say, well, you're not talking about my background, my problems, etc. I'm not interested in that. I'm only interested in the future, how I think you will be able to be 10 years from now. And that in a sense, takes away, at least initially, a feeling that they are people. We care about them as human beings, not as problems, not as kids at risk.
So I'd like to ask one more question to both of you, and then I'll invite the audience to ask you their own questions. So you've both seen a lot and you've experienced a lot, and you've had the trust and confidence of teens, their parents, their families. So for a parent who has a child who is either quote unquote pre-risk, at risk, not at risk, as Menachem prefers to say, it's a deeply unnerving and terrifying and confusing experience. So what practical advice would you offer parents as they are trying to help their teenagers, often reeling themselves from their own difficulties that their children are experiencing? What message do you have to offer? What advice do you have to offer?
What I'd like to say is give, if it's a parent, give your child unlimited support and a listening ear. The message, they all have the capacity to be great. Let them know that. Too many of these so-called problems are in the eyes of the beholder. It takes creativity and self-trust to look at the adolescent with different lenses. Free yourself from distorted images. So what basically I'm trying to say is that we have to begin to look at our kids differently. And once we begin to look at them differently, they will begin to feel that we support them, we're able to listen to them. We could go a very long way in helping them reach their goals and their objectives in life. But it basically takes a true change in perception of how we look at our young people, and also showing them that we know that they will be successful in life and great.
I'm always very cautious before I say anything about parenting. Maybe because I'm not sure what it says about my parenting or what it says about anyone else's ability to see it through. Generally, I don't teach parenting. I'll share 2 or 3 ideas based on how we engage at Crossroads. At Crossroads, we engage with boundaries and we engage with love. We see so many, and the combination of a good dose of boundaries and a good dose of love, we've seen that be a real stabilizing factor, and a real important factor in the development of the teens that we engage with. Sometimes kids come from homes where there's only boundaries and no love. That usually doesn't work out. Relevant to, Dr. Gottesman's answer. Sometimes people come from a home of love, but no boundaries. Often there's many challenges there. Sometimes there's no love and no boundaries. That's called neglect, and that's pretty bad. So we really focus on, we have our boundaries, we have rules, we keep to our rules. We have our protocol, we keep to our protocol. But we do our best to make sure that the love is felt. I'm thinking of a client that told her social worker that she was being abused, physically abused at home. She was a minor. And I told the client that I need to report this information to the Revacha. And she threatened me never to come back again. She went on to call me names that I can't say in the shul for a while, like, a good few minute soliloquy, really tearing me apart. But our boundaries and our rules that we keep to demanded that we report this information. 2 weeks later, the girl comes back to Crossroads. And why is that? The girl comes back to Crossroads because she knew that we cared about her. Sometimes boundaries hurt. But if it's with love, I think a combination of boundaries and love are crucial. The other thing that I believe in and that I've taught about was that teenagers should rebel. I have this session that I say, why every teen needs to rebel, and people come in, what are you talking about? So I make a distinction between healthy rebellion and unhealthy rebellion. But for teens to be able to explore, to be able to try be different, they're supposed to be different. To figure out who they are, and who are they going to contrast themselves from. Often it's from us, their parents. So they're supposed to rebel. Obviously, there's a line, when it's a question of safety, when it's a question of their safety that, as parents we need to step in, so we step in. But I think the concept of teens should explore, teens should rebel. I think that's a crucial, that's a crucial point. The last point that I'll add is when parents are talking to me about a conflict that they're having and what they should do about it, I usually ask, are you talking to your child? I say, we talk every night for an hour. I said, you're in very good shape. You don't have to worry. Because I think the lines of communication need to stay open, really at all costs. And the lines of communication are so crucial when you're dealing with a child who is pushing, your buttons, and who is exploring, and who is, pushing the boundaries. So I think, constant communication and openness, is important.
I think what I would like to do is just give a brief synopsis of a number of points that I had made in the book dealing with the connection between parents and children. I think it's important for parents to accept both the child's strengths and the present challenges, to believe in the child's future, to trust in his or her innate integrity, allow choices, provide unconditional love. And at the same time, parents should also be searching for the means to unlock barriers the child wants to overcome by focusing first and foremost on what's bothering the child. Parents committed to a child's genuine search for meaning can greatly benefit from engaged hearts and freed spirits, their own.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. So we're now going to take a few minutes and take some questions from audience members. Yes.
I have a 16-year-old son, and how do we get him? He's in a high school that it's a sleepaway high school, but it's very hard to get him to, when he's there, to stay overnight, and it's very hard to get him to go to school. He skips a lot. So I was wondering, in other words, I'm not looking to transfer him to your school. I'm looking to try to encourage him to go to the school that he's in, and then as a backup plan, we'll see your school. But that's the kitzer, so to speak. And I'd like to know, because the channels of communication are open in general, but he shuts himself up, and he stays away from school. He's in 10th grade.
I think, first of all, it's an issue of the school and your son's feeling about if he's in the right place or not. And if he's not convinced that he's in the right place, he certainly will run away. He certainly doesn't want to remain in a place that he doesn't feel comfortable with. So I think, one, it's incumbent upon the school to try to work out and be as flexible as possible.
They are.
Okay.
They really are. They're super flexible.
And I think parents have to be also very supportive of the struggle that he's going through, and giving him, as parents, giving him, your son, a feeling that you support him and you trust him and you accept him, etc., etc. A lot of the kids that have come to Mellon have been kids that just weren't able, who needed an alternative system of education. If he cannot receive what he is within the more standard type of school setting, then maybe Mellon can be an option, because we have the flexibility and the ability to deal and cope with such situations in which he then will be able to, one, accomplish, continue his studies, but still be in an environment in which he feels he has control over himself and his environment. So there's no, again, as Robbie said, there's no magic formulas. The school will give a little more. If the parents will be more supportive, that's one approach. If there's a need for something else, then there's Mellon or maybe other programs that could be more flexible in dealing with some your son's issues and problems.
I'll talk more in general terms. And obviously, when you answer a question like this, easier said than done, but I'll share two thoughts that came to me. One is relating to something that Dr. Gottesman said about them feeling in control. actually one of the similarities between Mellon and Crossroads is that you don't have to be at either of those institutions. If you're coming to Mellon for your educational process and everything else that Mellon offers, if you're coming to Crossroads for a social therapeutic experience, you're coming because you want to, and you're in the driver's seat. And you were given the message that you're in the driver's seat. You're the one who's in control. You're the one who's making these decisions. So to the extent possible that a kid is having a difficult time with the school or going to school, to the extent possible that we allow them to be part of the process. If school's not working out, have them be part of the process of what their alternative is, and have them feel some of that sense of responsibility, and that school isn't something that we're doing to you. School is something that we could potentially think about together. What would be the ideal place, for me to go, and open up that as a conversation, and to the extent possible, have them be in the driver's seat. Sometimes the second point that I was just going to quickly make is sometimes it's not an educational issue. Sometimes it's a therapeutic issue. And again, not going into the specific case. But the wonderful thing about a school like Mellon is that they have all sorts of services. A place like Crossroads, our therapeutic support. We have a system where if a kid is homeless on the street, we can't do therapy with them. If they're home, we have to find a home. They have to begin. There's different levels of processes that we go through. Sometimes before a kid is able to jump into their educational process, they have to jump into some form of emotional or therapeutic process. Sometimes. Sometimes that could happen at a parallel, in a parallel way in certain schools. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I just would like to add that at Mellon we've sort of conceptualized that each of the students need at least 3 different types of frameworks. One, there's a need for freedom to choose. And in this case, I think learning should be by choice. The child should never feel that he's subjected to learning if the child is not really interested in learning. So ultimately, if you create an environment in which he has choice, he then will ultimately make the right choices. Freedom to change. The student has to feel that, and those that work around him, as well as the student, have to feel that they're able to change, that something will happen, that both the individual and the system will meet at some point. And then there's the freedom to believe in themselves. So you really, in a sense, what Mellon has created is a school setting, but it's within a therapeutic environment. The Cardinal Principles are based on something educational, the model developed by Summerhill. The therapeutic environment is basically based on the work that Milton Erickson had done in brief therapy and analytic communication. There's a whole world of how to communicate with, and there are basic cardinal principles when you work with a client. You have to understand processes of change. You also have to understand protecting the integrity of the student, and also basically accepting, a feeling of acceptance. And then there's also this spiritual connection. The student has to feel that he's spiritually connected to. So what we have done is created a model that is very appropriate for the students who come to Mellon, but there certainly are certain applications and implications that might be appropriate for the general system also. Because what's good in Mellon also might be good, or parts of it, in every school. But the point over here is that we have to understand and accept the student as he is, and use that as a basis or a framework in order to be able to. So the problem you deal with, you basically have to accept your son as he is with the problem, and then take it from there, and then see where it could go and what is needed in order to try to resolve, you know, the basic issue that he really doesn't want to possibly be in the school that he is today.
Yes.
I'd like to say that we've known the Gottesman for many years, and one of the most beautiful things about them is that they walk the talk.
Speak louder, please.
They walk the talk, meaning we, for example, had a kid thrown at us at 17 years old who was off the street, and we called him up and said, what should we do with him? He came over both at Shabbat, and he brought him to school, and the kid graduated. He's a very bright boy. And I think they're just marvelous human beings, and I have great admiration for both Leslie and besides that, I just want to ask this though. Yeah, I've been educational in my life, many professionally, and it's not only the issue of the school not being adequate that gets a kid into being off the road. It's also very often a difficult home life situation. So they come to you guys not only because the school didn't suit their needs. You know, as an educator, I can tell you schools are faced with loads of problems, and obviously you can't always cater to what the kid needs and all that. But there's also issues of the kid having a lot of internal stuff going on. I wonder if you address issues related to family life, and if you bring families into the context of the cure, helping the kid get back into a healthy being.
Okay, I think Norman, the only way that I could talk about, most of the families that come have a certain perception of their students. They have faced many, many challenges, and they don't know what to do, okay? And in some cases, they may have even given up on their kids. They hear what I have to say when I do the interview of the family and the kid. And my perception, and I'm only talking personally, is that when I'm able to change the kid who sits for sometimes an hour and a half, 2 hours, listening to me talk to him, the parents are hearing that too. And most parents, as most kids, leave that first initial intake meeting with a slight tinge of change. I've observed this. And parents have, and students talk about this too. Something happens at that initial meeting. The best remedy to deal with problems with kids, between kids and parents, is as the process of the kid begins to change, the student begins to change in school, the parent also begins to change. And this, I think, is a critical issue. The home cannot change until the kid changes, because they have given up hope. But once they begin to feel that something is happening, their kid is coming to school, maybe even if it takes a year. Mellon is the only school in the world that will let a kid take a year off. And we will wait. And we will be very patient. And let me tell you, the second year, that kid started to come to school. And the third year already he was studying. It's a process. As long as parents need that hope as well as the kid. And when you could give parents hope that things will change, and they begin to see it, they then will change. And there will be more of a, connection And believe me, this really happens. The kids are the ones that can produce the change in their parents. It's not their parents, the kids. It's the kids, their parents. It's very adin, but I think I really believe in it. And the kids are great. The kids are really great.
The Crossroads' particular approach is to take a teen, to take a young adult, and let them know that they're our client. They're in the center. Unfortunately, not always, but unfortunately, sometimes the problem is very much the home. And that's really impacted them in such negative ways. And for them to realize that they're in the center. I'm not going to say when, but we had a 20-year-old young woman who wanted to work with us. And she reached out to us. And then, before she even got to us, her father's on the phone with me saying, okay, this is what you need to do for my daughter. We found out afterwards that there was a very, very unhealthy relationship that had legal implications as well between the father and the daughter. And within weeks of focusing and giving her a space, she never had a space her whole life, but giving her the space and saying, you're in the center, you're our client. We saw such wonderful change. Totally a different person. And when the parent calls, in that situation, where there's really an unhealthy situation going on, I basically say, I'm happy to tell you about Crossroads, but you're not the client here. Now, that's in an unhealthy situation. When there are healthier, when it's a healthier situation in the home, and the teen, wants the ability to engage with, their parents, they use us often as a vehicle to say, hold on, I need to be able to engage, say something to my family. We do family meetings. In general, we don't do the systems theory. In general, we're focused on the teen and the client, and we've seen that have the most impact. So it doesn't directly answer your question, but I share a little bit about what we've done.
I just want to cite a very small case. We had many years ago a Haredi girl coming to our school, and the father refused to come. The father refused to come. And the mother came, and we spoke, and the father really cut ties with his daughter. 2 weeks later, the father shows up. I want to meet the person who got my daughter to come every day to school. The only way we could reunite is when the student leads the way. Then parents then will follow suit. And this has been our experience, and I think we can continue to see it, because the kinds of things that parents write and the kinds of things that students write shows that when things change, it affects the whole dyad, the whole relationship. Not only parents, but we're talking about peers and society and going on to the army. Everything changes, but the change has to begin with the student. And then life could continue once a process begins. Robbie talks about process. And in so many cases, and I must cite one more case, which I mentioned last week. Yeah, one more. I took a student at Meled right after Pesach, or right before Pesach, 12th grade. That means she had 3 more months to finish school. And she wasn't in the school at all. But she came to Meled, she wanted to study, and she wanted to graduate. Erev Erev Pesach, she was thrown out of her home. She was on the street. She asked if she could study at Mellon, and b'mikra, we also tried to help her. We gave her a place to be in a home until we could find something else. But that's not the issue. The issue is, we took this young lady, we said, in order to graduate, you have to do one course. Select any subject you'd like to study and prepare for it and do well in the Bagrut. The teachers reported to me that was too difficult. So we dropped that. Second proposal was, I will take this young lady personally as a student. We will do a project. If she's successful in the project, she'll be able to graduate. No way. She wasn't capable of doing that. But I let her graduate. And the day of graduation, her mother came to the school. This is the first time she saw her mother. They both embraced, put their heads on, each one on the shoulder, and they cried. And I cried too. So,
We'll take one more question. Go ahead.
First of all, my name is Tracy. I had the honor of knowing Menachem since I came back in the country 12 years ago. My son insisted that he wants to go to Mellon, and I'm like, no, it's a place for troubled kids, because of course we're always in denial that our kids are troubled kids. I took him to meet Menachem. He said, you just have to meet the principal. And I took him there and, of course, fell in love with Menachem, and that was the end of that. And he started studying at Mellon. And Menachem really became a father for my son, which was extremely helpful when he didn't believe that love can come from an older man. It was really important. And he spent a lot of time in Crossroads, and they were invaluable for his journey. He's still on his journey, but I think that it's kept him alive and moving forward. I had the honor of writing the book review for the book, for Menachem's book. I wrote the parenting column for the Jewish Post for parents of adolescents for years and years, and the experience with my son, and also with that, and loving Menachem and Leslie, so that was really exciting. What I've done, I've been a counselor for adolescents and young adults for close to 30 years, and I find that without working together with the parents and the family, I couldn't make headway. Like within the second or third meeting that I've had with the kids, I have to bring the parents on board. And what I had always actually approached Robbie about this before, and some other of the drop-in centers, if there would be the possibility of, in addition to working with the kids, once a month, the madrichim, that are the counselors that are actually working with the kids, who know the best what the issues are, because the kids are getting better at the center, and then they go home and it starts all over again because there's not a change in the household. And like Menachem said, that initial meeting, it started bringing a change, but the parents need more than that. If there be a possibility that once a month there could be a meeting between the counselors at Crossroads and parents who are interested to really understand how to build that relationship at home, how to support their kids, how to communicate with their kids so that your job will be easier because the kids will get better quicker, and the parents will feel like, thank God, first of all, they love you even more than they have before because they'll know you more, but just to really get the basic tools on how to create a home life that would be more successful for their child than what's happening right now, that they would end up in Mellon or end up in Crossroads.
Is there a question?
That was the question.
What's the question?
I asked it twice. Is there a possibility that once a month at Crossroads there would be a forum where parents could come and sit with the counselors and hear what you guys hear from the kids, that there's issues at home, and if we only had communication, or if we only had whatever, so that you guys can speak with the parents and help them understand how to create a more supportive household.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. Nice to see you. I'll respond by saying that I don't think that... I'll tell you what I am thinking about in terms of parents. We've thought about it in the past, and we're still thinking about it in terms of having a space at Crossroads where parents can meet, even have a staff member facilitate a meeting for parents where, whether it's a support group or some of an educational group, where we offer an insight into what kids are going through. You know, a challenge of what you're bringing up. And it's a little bit a double-edged sword for us. An existential, you know, challenge for Crossroads is so many of the teens that we're working with. As I said, you know, the relationship with the parents is often very unhealthy. And bringing their parents into Crossroads, the place that they chose as a safe space for them becomes less safe for them. You know, we've gotten this feedback a lot of the time when we want to engage with kids' parents. Like, no, you can't bring them here. This is my place. And on a case-by-case basis, like I said before, we're totally open to bringing parents in, you know, facilitating a conversation, offering support to parents with the kids on board. But at the end of the day, the kid is the client, and we're following their lead. You know, if they're totally against the conversation, if we think a conversation could be helpful, so we encourage, you know, that direction. But the kid is going to make that final call. What I think Crossroads can do, and what may be a nice service to the community of adults and parents, would be able to create some form of support group for parents to be able to meet, not connected to the kids that we're seeing. Meaning, it's not that I'm seeing, you know, Yankel and Yossi, and then we're meeting with Yankel and Yossi's parents. But we're meeting with two kids, and you know, we're opening it up to any parent that wants to come, and they're not necessarily going to meet with their kid's therapist, you know, etc. So that's an idea that we've been toying with, you know, and that we potentially can move forward with. Okay.
I just would like to also something additional. Tracy, the present principal of Mellon, my initial meeting with him was curiosity about a support group, parent support group that he was running. And I actually attended one of the sessions because there were rumors the parents would wait a very long time on a Thursday evening till late in the night to talk to him. I was very curious, and I attended with him the last session. We both ran it. There's always room for parent support groups at Mellon. In particular, or, you know, I can't talk about other, you know, institutions. Thing that I would like to say most about how we deal with parents, I usually tell the teachers that when they have these parent-student meetings, parent-teacher meetings, if possible, if there's nothing good to say, find something good to say. That's number one. And always begin with something positive. Always begin with something positive. Remember, my philosophy says, I've never seen a bad kid. Sometimes kids may not do good things, but there's never a bad kid.
Thank you both very, very much. I think we're going to wrap it up for the night because it's getting sort of late. If anyone has further questions, I would encourage you to contact either of the speakers. I'm sure they'd be willing to answer questions. And I would just like to give a special thanks to Rabbi Ian Pear at Shir Hadash for hosting us here at Oal Nechama. And a huge, huge thank you to Rabbi Aaron and Bina Poston from Yibaneh, who helped coordinate this evening. And my colleague, Ashir Yosefa, who's the editor-in-chief of Menorah Books, who worked so hard at editing Not at Risk, and unfortunately couldn't be here with us tonight. I really have so much gratitude towards her. And thank you to everybody for coming out to this wonderful discussion. I really encourage you all to support both of these organizations, and please buy the book. It's on sale tonight for 60 shekels. You're not going to find it for a better price anywhere else in Israel. And we hope to see you at future events, either with Koren, Menorah, or with Yibaneh. Thank you.
ייבנה, ייבנה, ייבנה המקדש, יציון, יציון, יציון תמלא, יש שם שיר, שיר חדש.